And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, August 20th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Hit the $ icon in the chat menu. This is for the super chat, so this will highlight your comment. I will acknowledge it during the live broadcast, and it's just a great way to help out the show and make the show more lively. I mean, that's really what it's all about, is interacting with you guys. We appreciate your viewership each and every day. And the alternative way to help out the show as well is clicking on the link, GSMC Podcast, or going to the link, GSMCPodcast.net. But Super Chat's easier. You stay with the video as opposed to the link where you have to leave the video and go to an alternate site. So just wanted to bring that up and hope everybody is doing well. So let's get into the topics for today. So more quarterback stuff today. So we're going to talk about some comments made by Tua Tagovailoa about Brian Flores. Some interesting comments on Brian Flores' coaching style, and Tua kind of comparing it to how it is now with Mike McDaniel. So we'll get into that. We'll also talk about Jayden Daniels of the Commanders being named the starter. So he will officially take the field week 1, which, I mean, we all knew that was probably going to happen, but again, just wanted to talk about that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about Bo Nix, his performance so far in the preseason, and how it kind of seems like we're getting towards him maybe being the starter right off the bat to start the year. We'll talk about Justin Herbert returning to practice, and then we'll get into talking about the Patriots quarterback competition as well between Drake May and Jacoby Brissett. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Tua and him talking about Brian Flores and his coaching style. So it was interesting because I did hear some of the clip, the audio from it when he was being interviewed on it. And this is what he said on the Dan Le Batard show. So he said, to put in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you that you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this, you are accurate, you are the best whatever, you are this, you are that. How would that make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And he continues by saying, and then you hear it and hear it regardless of what it is, the good or the bad, and you hear it more and more, you start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. If you have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear or probably shouldn't be hearing, you're going to start to believe that about yourself. That's sort of what ended up happening. It's basically been 2 years of training that out. Not just me, but a couple of guys as well that have been here since my rookie year all the way till now. So kind of some strong comments made by Tua on that. And again, that was Brian Flores' coaching style. And his approach was, being negative towards players so they could bring out the best in them, hopefully. Well, that was his intention, I guess. But, yeah, very different. There is a contrast between Brian Flores and Mike McDaniel. And Tua said, you start to believe it. You start to believe you're not very good. And that's what you don't want with your quarterback. You don't want your quarterback to believe what you're actually saying. Now, Brian Flores might not actually be, doesn't actually mean it, but he's trying to motivate his players in some sort of way. To, like I said, bring out the best in them. And it affected Tua in a negative way, and like you said, it affected other players as well. And now you have Mike McDaniel come in and be very positive and, telling him that he's going to do everything he can to put him in the best situation. And Tua has benefited from that. Now, I think we need to see more out of Tua when it comes to the playoffs, but, last year had his best year. And the Dolphins have tried to surround Tua with talent. They got Jalen Waddle, his buddy from Alabama. They also got Tyreek Hill, who's one of the best receivers in the NFL. They've surrounded Tua with a lot of talent. And, when he first got to Miami, there wasn't as much talent. Now, the Dolphins, you look at their offense on paper, it's great. And we saw what it could do last year. But I know from some of the things that I was watching, around social media yesterday, you look at Brian Flores, he comes from the Belichick coaching tree. And when you look at the Belichick coaching tree, it's not great. It's not great because you have him, you have Matt Patricia, you have Joe Judge, Josh McDaniels, Bill O'Brien. It's not great. Now, Belichick had a similar. Now, Belichick had that similar mentality where, sometimes your best wasn't enough. He always wanted you to do more. And that's what fueled guys like Tom Brady. Tom Brady wanted to be told that he wasn't doing enough, that he wasn't that good, because that motivated him. Tom Brady was always looking for motivation. But each player is different. Not all your players are going to respond to you yelling at them saying that, they stink. So you got to be able to. I mean, I'm. It's like I'm giving coaches advice. Like, I know what I'm talking about, but I think you have to adapt. You have to be able to, what do certain players respond to? Now, I know we live in an age now where, across all sports, you have fans that will say that teams coddle the players, but that's kind of what you have to do now. Because for certain players, that's going to bring out the best in them. You don't want to see coaches rip players publicly in press conferences or just rip them, on the practice field because, that could get to them. And then they don't play well. So that's why when you talk about this situation here, bring in Mike McDaniel, who's positive, who's, encouraging, Tua responds to that. He's got a coach that he thinks believes in him and does believe in him. And the organization believes in him because he got this big contract. So, he's responded to that. And let's see what kind of year he has in 2024. Now, I don't think Brian Flores was a bad coach. But again, that was just his style. And it's just certain players did not respond to that. So it's some interesting comments there by Tua. So, Tua was not a big fan of Brian Flores. So, we'll see, how everything pans out this year for the Dolphins. They got a lot of talent on this team. And, I've said it a bunch of times. But now it's about taking that next step. Because I think Mike McDaniel is a good coach. It's just these last couple of years, whether it was the playoff game against the Bills with Skylar Thompson at quarterback, because who knows? Maybe with Tua, maybe they win that game. And then they played the Chiefs last year, which, I mean, I don't think anybody's beating the Chiefs in that weather. They got to go into this year. I know Mike McDaniel's got his ways of motivating people. How he was, timing his or structuring his meetings when they would be at certain times to remind, the team of the playoff drought that the Dolphins have had in terms of playoff wins. They haven't had a playoff win in a long time. They just got to hope that they don't have another late season collapse and then end up losing in the playoffs. They got to hope that they could start fast like they do and carry that throughout the whole season. And that's why, people are like myself are hesitant on putting the Dolphins on a deep playoff run, having the Dolphins go on a deep playoff run, because they collapse at the end of the year. So we'll see what happens this year. But listen, Tua's got his big contract. Tyreek Hill's got a new contract. Jalen Waddle's got a new contract. Everybody's happy right now. So they got to go out there and they play. Who do they play week 1? Oh, the Jaguars. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to start off the year, I think. They could definitely win that game. Jags got something to prove, obviously, but, get off to a fast start and maintain that and beat these better teams. Buffalo did get a little bit weaker. And the Dolphins, in some aspects, got a little bit weaker just because, you got guys coming back on defense from injury. They're hoping they get them back. So, we'll see how it goes. But get off to a fast start and maintain that. But everybody got paid. So, and of course, right when I start saying that, we got the Spider-Verse going on. So we're going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk more about quarterbacks. We'll talk about Jaden Daniels being named the starter for the Commanders. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.